like what it actually controls. So smooth muscle, cardiac muscle glands. We're pretty good there. We have those afferent and efferent neurons. We spoke about that as well. Yeah, we did all that stuff, right? Myelinated, unmyelinated. We compared the two, autonomic and the somatic. I think we're pretty good up to right about here, I think, where we sort of left off. I think we did this from before, like way back when, some other chapters, and we drew the picture out, we did all the sensory stuff, we did the motor, then with the visceral motor, we divided it into the sympathetic and parasympathetic division. One thing we haven't talked about though is this dual innervation thing here at the very bottom, which basically says this. Here's like a great little thing for you too, we'll come back and do this as well. I actually have two ways to control these organs, meaning like this. If I'm controlling my heart, so I have one pathway that goes to my heart over here, and I can have a second pathway that goes to my heart over here. So basically it's saying this. I can have a parasympathetic control over that organ, and I can have a sympathetic control over that organ. So they call that dual innervation, when I have two things that are controlling an organ. So one's the parasympathetic, the other one's the sympathetic. So what do you think the sympathetic will do to that organ? Increase that activity. And the parasympathetic will decrease it, sort of slow it down. So it makes sense to have two ways to control those organs that are out there. So just know by definition that dual innervation is just that. I have two ways to control those organs. That's right, one's sympathetic, the other one is parasympathetic. So that's pretty easy, I think. That's an easy slide for you. Just I'm trying to just like hit the basics here. One speeds it up, the other one slows it down, so that's good to know. Which one speeds it up again? That's the sympathetic, right? Okay, we're good there. Alrighty, so speed up, slow down, we're good. And here's some crazy pictures for you. I'm not sure if you guys can actually see those that well, because they're pretty teeny tiny on here. But this actually is showing you that dual innervation thing. And so you can see all the blue stuff, right? All my blue lines going to like heart, and lungs, and liver, and all the internal viscera over here. That's all my sympathetic side. And then here are those same organs over here, right? And it's done by the parasympathetic over here. So what do you see as like sort of different? Sort of like where those nerves are coming from. Well, here's one of the things. We're going to find here from T1 down to L2. That's my sympathetic side. So this could be T1. That's my first thoracic. And all those little nerves that are pulling off, and it goes all the way down to L2 down here. So all that stuff is sympathetic. So pulling off the cord from those levels, T1 to L2. I have a slide for this later for you too. But it's from T1 to L2. What about my parasympathetic stuff? It's all that cranial nerve thing. They have cranial nerve number 3, number 7, number 9. So we have that going on. So cranial nerves. Yeah, I have 3, 7, 9, and 10. And also, way down here, coming off my sacrum, I have S2, S3, and S4 for the sacrum, right? So S for sacrum through here. Those are my parasympathetic levels, if you will. So, if you want to like, again we're going to go through that one more time, but so sympathetic, my nerve would come from T1 through L2, and then my parasympathetic, my nerves would come from those cranial nerves, 3, 7, 9, 10, and sacral segments, S2, S3, and S4. Okay, sound pretty okay? So we're just pulling off a different level, right, going to those same organs. Guys remember what the vagus nerve did? Or like the vagus nerve is the wandering nerve, right? Covers, yeah, like everything. Right? We said sort of wanders like heart, lungs, all that good stuff. Okay. All right, so, yep, question?
What did you call that?
Oh, this is the levels.
Just the last nerve.
Vagus nerve, yeah, number 10. Cranial nerve number 10 is the vagus nerve. 3 is the oculomotor.
Facial.
7 is facial, 9, right, so those ones we already learned. Yeah, so those are them. So we'll come back and we'll see those again in like a minute or two. I'm just trying to show you there's some different levels for the different innervations. Okay, and here are some things you might see during a sympathetic, right, response for us. And we said before it goes to increase everything, increase heart rate, increase respiration, make your pupils dilate, all that good stuff. But it's not just emergencies that we're going to see these little things will kick in, but also during exercise. During exercise, your heart rate goes up, right? Respiration goes up, your pupils get bigger. Same response. When you're excited, what happens? Same thing, right? Could you breathe more heavily? Heart rate increases, that sort of thing. And also if you're embarrassed. So they call these E situations, if you will. So everything that starts with an E, so emergencies, exercise, embarrassment, excitement. So how do we know those? There's always a question or two on, which one would have a sympathetic response, which one would have a parasympathetic response. So anything that would elevate heart rate and blood pressure and all those good things. So you can probably just think about it and figure them out. So those are good. So we know those for sure. And then we're going to have, same thing, right? So here's what's going to happen in the body. So it happens during those times, so here's what's going to happen. Vigorous physical activity, rapid production of ATP. We're talking about taking glycogen and breaking it down to glucose to make more fuel for the body. So that would be good to know, right? We're going to do a little glycogen to glucose conversion. Because again, we need more fuel for the body for the muscular activity and all that good stuff. So we can say a little glycogen, convert that to glucose. And with the glucose, we can make energy, right, in the form of ATP. So that makes good sense because we're going to burn tons of ATP, right? If we're like physically active, that sort of thing, right? Exercise, emergencies, we have to have that fuel. Are you good for that one? That's pretty easy, right? So we're good there. Next one we have, here's what we're going to see physically on the body, right? We're going to break down fuel here for us. Your pupils will dilate, which means they get larger, right? They get bigger. And why would your pupils get bigger during a sympathetic response, do you think? So you can see more, right? So you have bigger pupils, you get more information coming in. So that's like a natural response on that one. Hey, what happens to your pupils if you see somebody that you like? They get bigger or smaller?
Bigger.
They get bigger, right? So that actually is like the thing. So if you see somebody you like, your pupils get really big. So how does they get small? Then they probably don't like you so much, right? Don't like you. So anyway, so pupils dilate, heart rate increases, blood pressure increases. So again, preparing the body for those exercise times, right, emergency times. Airways allow more air to enter the lungs, so they dilate as well. That's pretty good. What about blood flow to your kidneys and your digestive tracts? Yeah, we're going to shut that down because, yeah, we don't really care about like digesting food and urinating, whatever, if you're like running for your life, right, that sort of thing. So we're going to shut down anything that's not essential for like muscular activities. So we'll shut down your digestive tract, shut down the kidneys, all that good stuff. How about people that are like stressed out all the time? That's like a sympathetic thing, right? Like kids, jobs, whatever, you're always stressed out. So your sympathetics are sort of kicking in like all day long sort of thing. How's their digestion usually for people that are stressed? Not so good, right? Because that's why your little sympathetic system's working 24/7. It doesn't allow you to process your food because it shuts down all the blood flow to it, and you get all sorts of nasty things happening like that. All right, so we're pretty good there. Yeah, I said release glucose from glycogen. We did that already. So that's good. Just know those few little things. So pupils get bigger, heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up, right? More oxygen. What about the other side now, the parasympathetic set? Well, does just the opposite, right? So we're going to shut down all those things that aren't really required for like normal everyday functioning. So here it's going to restore body energy, right, during times of rest. We're going to increase digestion. We're going to, what's going to go into? What's we add to that one? Repair, right? So we can like repair our tissues. So I always call it like the rest, repair, recovery phase, like rest, repair, recovery. Like all my R's. So rest, repair, recovery. So this is your parasympathetic during times of rest. We're going to repair all those tissues that have been damaged, and basically the body is in a recovery phase. So rest, repair, recovery. Slud, not slut, but slud here. So got S-L-U-D-D-D sort of thing. So salivation sounds like what? Your mouth gets real watery when you smell food, that sort of thing, right? So it's preparing the body to eat food and digest the food and all that. So that's a good one. So salivation over there. What about lacrimation? What's that one? Yeah, tearing, that sort of thing, right? On this one. You get a little bit of urination, so that's a parasympathetic response. D, we can put some digestion in there. And they have defecation and decreased heart rate, all those good ones. Pupils will constrict, right? And also the airway passageways are smaller, right? Less respiration, that sort of thing. So basically everything gets shut down in this end. So you guys are good for those? Those are pretty easy, right? So everything's on the downside. Cool, those are good. We're good there. And here are those ganglia things we talked about from the other day. We mentioned how it was a spot, an area where those two neurons can communicate with each other. So we'll have some of those for you to see here. And those are called the autonomic ganglia. And they come in different varieties. Again, you include the sympathetic ganglia and the parasympathetic ganglia. So you have to remember, this is my little piece here, right? And here I have my cranial nerves, 3, 7, 9, and 10 sort of thing. So 3, 7, 9, and 10. And then S2, 3, and 4. S2, 3, and 4. And so they have two neurons in that pathway. So there has to be some ganglios over here too. We didn't talk about those yesterday because they are different. So I have some over here. We talked about these ones here that are with like T1 down to like L2. All of these sympathetic chain ganglia, my little prevertebral ganglia. So we just looked at those, or the ones that we're going to take a look at. But these other ones do exist as well. So I do have some for the sympathetic and parasympathetic both. So they're both classified as autonomic ganglia though. Okay, so we're good there. So we'll go a couple more slides here and figure out what's what here. Let's see. Here's my sympathetic ganglia. So again, those are, which one's sympathetic chain ganglia? That's the one that looks like a chain. That would be good to know. So we call these guys here my sympathetic, I'm going to abbreviate that, chain ganglia. It has another name too, which we call it. These ganglia include the sympathetic chain, also known as the paravertebral. So it runs parallel to or right alongside of, and so those are also called my paravertebral ganglia over there. And then what else do I have? I have prevertebral ganglia. So those are these little guys over here.
The celiac, the superior and the inferior.
Exactly. So my little prevertebral ganglia, of which, yes, we have the celiac, the superior mesenteric, the inferior mesenteric. And those are also called like the collateral ganglia because they're like off to the side a little bit. So you might see those either way. But as long as you know that, those three are looking pretty good. You guys okay so far with that? We did it yesterday. We'll go through the whole thing one more time for you too. So celiac, superior mesenteric, inferior mesenteric. So again, they sit over by that abdominal aorta and all that good stuff. Okay. Now here's my parasympathetic ones, which we're not going to do. Okay, I just sort of focus on the sympathetic ones. But these include things like the ciliary, the pterygopalatine, submandibular, conic, all those good ones. So those will be the ones like here, I sort of mentioned before, like these guys here. But we're not going to cover those, but they do exist, right? Okay. All right, so those are okay. So sort of skip that slide, if you will, as far as naming those. Here it sort of compares sympathetic to the parasympathetic. And so they actually named these a couple different ways too. If I have this section with my cranial nerves and my sacral nerves, they said, well, let's just go ahead and call it the cranial sacral division. And that's where that name comes from right over here. So the parasympathetic is also known as the cranial sacral division. What should we call the ones here from my thoracic and lumbar area? Put the two words together. So I have thoracic and lumbar called thoracolumbar. And so your sympathetic is also known as the thoracolumbar. So again, like a little confusing again? You guys are doing okay. All right, anyway, so those are my two. So my sympathetic chain, my sympathetic area is thoracolumbar, so T1 through L2. My parasympathetic is the cranial sacral division of those. What else is sort of like unique? I know preganglionic cell bodies in the first two lumbar. So again, T1 through L2. Over here I have, the nuclei for cranial nerves, so 3, 7, 9, 10, and sacral spinal cord, we're good there. Some other ganglia. So I'll go through and like sort of pick and choose like what's good to know. So we're almost done. We're getting close. We'll draw that picture again, some other crazy stuff. We're going to skip all this autonomic plexus stuff. And if you remember, like a plexus was like a blending of nerves, like from one, what we got, from like here and from here, and they all sort of blend together. So we do have some more of these plexus that are out there. And so they show you the cardiac plexus and the celiac plexus and all those good ones, but I can't remember sort of like fixing any of that stuff. Just try to keep it really basic for you. Let's see, innervated by each spinal nerve. Okay, so skipping that, we're skipping that, and skipping that, and skipping that one too. And here's a good picture though. That's pretty much what I was trying to show you yesterday, drawing the picture out for you as far as if I'm going to like a heart or your liver or your gallbladder or whatever. And then I showed you one here too for like the adrenal glands and some other things like that. So we're gonna like map that whole thing out like one more time for you. But we talked about like pre-ganglionic and post-ganglionic neurons and all that. So we're going nice and slow to make sure everybody sort of gets it. If you want to have, take a look at it over the weekend and try to like make better sense out of it too. So we'll come back to that one too. We're skipping this as well. There's some other stuff with like the sympathetic division, like what can happen. We talked about ptosis of the eye, pupillary dilation, don't care. We already did this, so 3, 7, 9, and 10. We're okay there. S2, S3, S4, we're okay there. We already did this, right? Oculomotor, facial, those are my cranial nerves. We're okay on that one. Yeah, don't care about any of that stuff. Don't care, don't care, don't care, don't care, don't care. Already did it. We're good. Don't care, don't care, don't care, don't care, don't care. Maybe care. I don't know. Let's see. Hold on. So, don't care. Okay, yeah. And don't care again. Already sort of did it, but we'll do it again. On the board. We're good. Don't care. Don't care. Don't care. Don't care. Don't care. Hey, that's it. Okay. All right. So let's go and like draw some pictures. What do you guys think? Okay, that's good. So, all right. So we'll run through and I'll show you exactly what you have to know. And then we'll draw some pictures, and we'll still be good, right? It's only like 220, so we're good, yeah. Okay. All right, let's turn this thing off over here, that way. And then, it's slime from like yesterday. It's crazy. All right, so I'll run through and I'll tell you exactly what you have to know. Little by little, we'll go through the whole process and do that. So whatever I write down is like good to know, I would say. Trying to make better sense. So it's activated during those times of like emergencies and exercise and all that crazy stuff, right? All those E situations. Embarrassment, excitement, exercise, emergencies. That's good. So my E's, so I can put it over here. Here's my sympathetic. We'll say all those E situations. Okay, over here. And we're going to see everything elevated, right? So everything gets elevated. Increase of heart rate. Increase of respiration. Pupils increase in size, right? So increase in pupil size. That's good. So next I want you to know is where does it come from off the spinal cord? So where do those nerves originate from? Well, they're going to originate anywhere from my first thoracic, T1, all the way down to L2. So from T1 to L2 are where the nerves come from to go to my heart and my lung and all my other duties over here too. T1 to L2. So what's the fancy name for that? Well, we'll call that the thoracolumbar area. Because from my thoracic spine to my lumbar spine is where it's at. Okay with that? That's pretty easy, right? Okay, next thing. We're going to do my parasympathetic. Over here, parasympathetic. What does it do? The SLUD thing, right? So, salivation, lacrimation, urination, defecation, digestion, all those ones are on there, like my E's for this one. That's my SLUD over there. And what does it do? Well, it will decrease my heart rate, and decrease my respiration, and decrease my pupil size, things like that. So where does it originate from? Yeah, cranial nerves, 3, 7, 9, 10. Also down here at the sacral level, S2, S3, and S4. Its fancy name is cranial sacral, for that one. So you like put that together somehow here. We're going to go like here. Sympathetic stuff. We're not going to deal with any of this talking about pathways going to those organs. Because we're going to have both, right? That dual innervation thing. We're going to focus only on this one and not do this one over here. Okay, so first thing is I have to figure out is how many neurons in my pathway to an organ. So if I'm going to my heart, how many neurons from my spinal cord to the heart? Always got to have 2. That's the key, got to have 2. Okay, so there's neuron number 1, and there's neuron number 2. I don't care if it's like to your heart, to your liver, to your spleen, to your uterus, whatever it is, you got to have 2, okay? Got to have 2. What do we call them? Pre and post, right? That's our thing, because where they synapse right there, that little thing is a ganglia. And so neuron number 1, over here, is before the ganglia, so it's pre. Neuron number 2 is after the ganglia, so it's post. So we call this one pre-ganglionic, and this one post-ganglionic. Does that make sense too? We're trying to just go like nice and slow, make sure we don't miss anything here. So you should know pre-ganglionic, these are my motor neurons now, right? So pre-ganglionic motor neurons. Are they myelinated or unmyelinated? Myelinated, right? They're always myelinated. So my pre-ganglionic, always myelinated. So over down here, yep, they have myelin. What are my post-ganglionic ones? They're non or unmyelinated or non-myelinated. So we'll say non-myelinated for those. Okay, that looks pretty good. Are we okay with that? So far so good? Didn't lose anybody? All right, so the ganglia. So, what types of these ganglia do we have, right? These are called, they're ganglia. The big classification is autonomic ganglia, right? Because it's part of the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, right? So they're my autonomic ganglia, of which they come in 2 types for my autonomic ones, right? For my sympathetic, I should say. I have one set that run right alongside my spinal cord. And they go all the way down to the very bottom. And they sort of loop around and come all the way back up to the other side. Those ganglia are called my sympathetic, because it's part of my sympathetic nervous system. Chain, because it's like a giant chain necklace, ganglia. So they're called my sympathetic chain ganglia, because they go on either side of the cord. I also have 3 that hang out on the front side of my cord. 1, 2, 3. What do we call those? Those are my collateral ganglia, or my prevertebral ganglia, and they actually have names to them. So we'll say those 3 over here. So we can call them prevertebral, because they're in front of my vertebra, aka collateral ganglia. And there's 3 of them, and their names are celiac, my first one, superior mesenteric, and then I have the inferior mesenteric for that one. So they're just in that order too. So my first one's the celiac, next one's the superior mesenteric, third one's the inferior mesenteric. And we said yesterday, like if I were to, again, synapse, right, in a ganglia, depending on like which one I synapsed in would sort of determine where I was headed in the body, right, that sort of thing. So I said if I did my celiac ganglia, I would go to my tummy, right, so to the stomach, over here. If I did my superior mesenteric, I would probably be heading to my small intestines. And if I did my inferior, I'd pick up large intestines, bladder, sex organs, all those things on this side. Now, how's that looking for you from yesterday? Does that sound pretty okay? Maybe some project? What else can we throw in there? We need a little different picture now for this whole thing. So we sort of found pre and post ganglionic. We talked about the two neurons, right? Myelinated, unmyelinated. We talked about my sympathetic chain. What if I synapse over here in my sympathetic chain? Where am I heading to? This all does my abdominal pelvic stuff, right? This is like abdomen. So this might help you too. So like abdomen and pelvic area. So, right, liver, pancreas, gallbladder, spleen, small intestines, large intestines, uterus, bladder. What about up here then, for my sympathetic chain? Thoracic, right? It has to be up top. So it's all my thoracic cavity things. So heart, lungs, those items up top. Okay. So if we're good with that, we go back and just do one more thing here for you. Okay, now all we did was this. I said, okay, well great, I know I go from here to there. If I cut through my spinal cord, like right there, just chop it right through that little neuron, just like that, and then look at it, right, like a top view sort of thing, like put it this way, here's how it's going to look. Here's where I got like a little crazy. Can I get rid of this stuff over here maybe? Can I get rid of this stuff maybe? Okay, we'll get rid of that over here. We'll draw that crazy picture for you guys. Everybody loves. Okay, so we'll try to draw a little smaller scale. So here's my spinal cord. And just like that there. And we have that little thing like this. All right. So the first thing I want you to know is this. If I divide my cord in half, like from just like that, I would like you to know that the back side, the posterior side of my cord, deals with all of my sensory information. So all my sensory. The front side does all my motor information. So there's definitely a question there for you on that stuff. So sensory in the back, motor in the front. That looks pretty good. And then those horns, those gray horns we have to learn about. On the back was my posterior gray horn. We learned that in lab. The front side was my anterior gray horn. We saw that one too. And off to the side here was my lateral gray horn. Perfect. That sort of went back to, like way back when we did this other crazy picture here. We said all of my sensory information goes into the cord and goes up like this, of which I call that my sensory afferent. Does that ring a little bit of a bell, maybe? So sensory afferent. You did that like same thing, S-A-M-E, so sensory afferent, motor efferent. Then motor commands would be generated from here and would go down and out my motor. That was my efferent. On that side, over there. And the same thing, I have my ascending tracts. That's my white matter now, my ascending tracts over here. And I have my descending tracts over there. So try to tie that chapter 14 in here too. So afferent, efferent, looking pretty good. Remember, I have over here for my sensory, it only comes from two spots. My sensory stuff, I have somatic sensory, and I had visceral sensory. Those are my two things I can take from. Motor command, same thing. I have somatic motor, and I have visceral motor. Okay, so what's my somatic motor commands control? Only one thing, skeletal muscle, right? So that's only skeletal muscle. And visceral does everything else. So it does cardiac muscle, it does smooth muscle, it does all my glands, that sort of thing. What about on the sensory side? Somatic does skeletal muscle again, right? So about body position, joints, all that good stuff. And also picks up all my special senses for me. Visceral, same thing, right? Sensory from my heart and my lung and my spleen and my uterus and all the other good stuff over here too, right? That's all of my sensory from, same stuff. Go down like cardiac, and smooth, and glands over here. All that internal visceral stuff. So it works exactly the same way. So sensory in, motor out sort of thing. So here's my same thing on the spinal cord, sensory in, motor out. So let me just draw, I can get rid of this real quick and sort of redraw that for you. Just add a few more things in here. Okay, so we said that we had, should have that like in your notes from like way back when. If we were to draw the same to like real size and real life stuff, how it works out here, the back side looks sort of like this coming up here, this one. Front side was like this, those sort of come together. This comes like this and does that little crazy thing here. That does that crazy thing here. That comes here, that goes there. And so we got to label these things. We said, yeah, on the back side, that was my dorsal root. So we learned that up in lab too, so dorsal root. This is my dorsal root ganglia. I'm just going to abbreviate that as DRG. This is my ventral root over here, coming out. This is my dorsal ramus. That's the one we do for you yesterday too, so dorsal ramus. This is my ventral ramus. And because I have two pathways here, it's still a ramus, but I have two of them, so it's the plural, rami, and we called it communicantes. Okay, so here's what I want you to know about this stuff, I guess. Where's my dorsal ramus go to? Your back. That's it. So if I'm going anywhere near my back, if I leave my spinal cord with a nerve that goes to my back, I got to go this way. I have to. So dorsal ramus goes right to my back. Doesn't matter what it is, a nerve going to some skeletal muscle, you got to go that way. A nerve going to a sweat gland, you got to go that way. A nerve going to an artery or vein, you got to go that way. That sort of thing, right? So anything on my back, have to take that path. What about my ventral ramus? Where does it go to?
Front.
Arms, legs. What about this pathway through here? Where does that go? It's all my internal stuff. So it's all my internal viscera. So heart, lung, liver, spleen, gallbladder, again, all those same things. Internal viscera. So those are my three paths I get to pick after I leave my spinal cord. I can go to my back, I can go to my front, I can go to my inside, right? So front, back, inside thing. Okay, then we tried to draw for you yesterday some pathways, like showing you like where the neurons went and how they sort of worked out and all that good stuff. So what I want you to know right now sort of thing is like, where's that go to? Where's that go to? Where's this go to? We named these two things here too, right? My rami communicantes. This side is actually the white side, and this side was the gray side over here. So I have a white rami communicantes and a gray rami communicantes. Okay, so we got that. What about this here? My posterior gray horn does what for me? What does it collect? All sensory information, right? Because the only one's on my back side is this one. So it does all sensory. All sensory. I have two for my motors. I have a lateral gray horn and an anterior gray horn. They both do motor commands. I have a somatic motor and I have a visceral motor. So I have to like pick and choose which one would be my visceral motor, do you think? It's this one, visceral motor. So any command, any signal that goes to my inside over here for like lung, liver, spleen, gallbladder, whatever, any command that would go to like arms and legs for like glands and blood vessels, whatever, right? All those things, anything that's autonomic, cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, glands, has to come from here. What's my anterior gray horn good for then?
Skeletal.
Skeletal muscle, and that's it. It only does one thing. It only generates commands to my skeletal muscles. So who have I lost so far? Like a lot of people or just like a couple people?
Never had me.
Just got one paper? Okay. All right. So let's go through it and like we'll do it like a little bit better and sort of figure it out and see what we're gonna do. And so that's sort of like sometime right in like 15 minutes. So okay. So let's go ahead and do it up sort of thing here for you. I'll draw that bigger over here so it can make more sense. You can sort of follow it and go from there. Okay. So I'm gonna like redraw this for you. So don't freak out. Don't freak out yet. Anyone freaking out yet? Just a little bit, maybe. That's what we're kind of. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, let's do it this way. I want to go to a skeletal muscle. Okay, I got that going on. So I want to send a signal from my brain to that skeletal muscle. How many neurons in my somatic motor pathway then? Two. Okay, that's a good start, right? We're talking about somatic motor. So again, somatic motor has to do with skeletal muscle. So somatic motor, skeletal muscle only. Okay, so two. One's up in my brain. From my pre-central gyrus, that's where we're going to start from. Comes all the way down my spinal cord, down to over here somewhere, right? Hooks on to neuron number 2, and from there I go to my little skeletal muscle, just like that. Okay, that looks pretty good. This one down here is called my upper motor neuron, because it's on top, right? So upper motor neuron. The bottom one, the lower one, is called the lower motor neuron. Okay, that's pretty good. So I drew it this way. Now let's draw it the other way. Sort of like this thing over here. Same thing, right? Still coming off my spinal cord over here. And I can divide it this way if you'd like to, over here. I have my posterior gray horn, that and that over here. So here's my anterior gray horn, lateral gray horn, anterior gray horn. We'll draw the crazy stuff in here too for you. Here, there sort of thing. Come up and over, goes down, here, that's going on. And that sort of thing, just like that one there. Okay. Let's say that I want to have that skeletal muscle is in my hand. So I want to like move my fingers to like do something or whatever. So I'm sending a signal from my brain, down my spinal cord, out my cord, through a nerve to my hand over here. So let's see the pathway that looks over here. So same thing. So we start from the cord, right? Here's my cord, right there. Same thing right over here. So where do I need to start from for that little neuron? I have to pick. It's a motor neuron, right? So yeah, anterior gray horn, so right there. So that little neuron is that neuron right there. It's like a little different view for you. So that one's this one. All right, so where do I go from here? Through my ventral roots, because my ventral root is all my motor stuff. And I'm going to my hand.
You're gonna go into the bottom there.
Yeah, remember this is all I got here? This is my ventral, wait for you, here's my ventral ramus. We said, yeah, if I go to my ventral ramus, that's hands, legs, arms, feet, all that stuff. So yes, I just go from here, and I go all the way down to my little skeletal muscle. And just like that. Pretty easy, right? What if I want to send a signal to my back, to some skeletal muscle on my back? Same thing, right? I leave from my anterior gray horn. I go through my ventral ramus, and let's go ahead and go this way, and go to my back, right to my dorsal ramus over here. On that side. How's that looking for you? Pretty okay? Let's say I want to receive information back about a joint in my wrist. So now I have some sensory information going backwards to my brain, so I can sort of figure out like where my body is in space, that sort of thing. So where do I need to start from or go from or whatever I need to do here? Just looking at it that way.
To your dorsal root, to your PGA.
I will. So if I'm coming from my hand, I'm coming up through this one, right? So I have to come up this way. So now I'm coming this way. Good job there, you're saying, yep, come this way. Dorsal root, because that's where all my sensory is on the back side here. So I do have to come this way. And I just dump it off right there. So that's the sensory pathway. It's coming this way. So sensory in the back, and then motor in the front, sort of thing. Okay, for that stuff, maybe that's the easy stuff, right? The somatic motor stuff is the easy stuff. The visceral motor is where it gets like a little weird. I only need one neuron from the cord to that organ. Anything else for like my visceral stuff, I have to have two, correct? So here's my first one. There's my second one going to wherever I go to, like a heart or something over here. So I have to have my preganglionic one and my postganglionic. And I got to have a ganglia as well to go ahead and synapse that one too. So let's do this pathway then. Let me go ahead and get rid of this other stuff because this sort of clogs everything up here. I'll get rid of that, and get rid of this. Just make it a little bit easier here to follow. Alrighty, so let's go to my heart. Gotta go to my heart. Alright, so I want to send a signal from my spinal cord right to my heart right over here. Where do I need to start from? So now I'm going to cut my cord right through here. Right, look at this one. So where do I need to start from? My lateral gray horn. My lateral gray horn does all of my visceral stuff, all my visceral motor stuff. So a little cell body here. Going through my ventral root, same thing. I'm going to my heart, so that's arms, legs, chest, that's my back, so I can't go either of those. I've got to go this way. This is where all my internal stuff is, right? Over here. So I'll go ahead and make my first left-hand turn. I'm coming down through here. I'm coming, and I need to find a ganglia, right? I have to have my ganglia right there. So here's my little ganglia, same little one right here, just like that. So I come down here, I hook on to neuron number 2, and I continue, and I go to my heart, just like that. So this is my preganglionic neuron, because it's before the ganglia. This one's my postganglionic neuron, because it's after it. My pre is myelinated, so it's white, and actually it travels through my white rami on this side, because white and white goes together. Here's my postganglionic, it's unmyelinated, and it's just gray. Does that make any better sense from yesterday? Maybe a little bit. Don't know, sort of, kind of. So that's not bad, right? So now if I'm synapsing in a sympathetic chain, I'm going to my thoracic cavity. That's okay. What else can I do? Let's do a signal to a sweat gland in my hand. So I do a signal to a sweat gland in my hand. Well, that's the key, right? So sweat gland in my hand. So it's a gland, so I have to use the lateral gray horn for all my visceral stuff. Let me get rid of that here real quick. Let me just sort of retrace this thing a little bit. All right, so I'm going from here to my same thing, ventral root, for my motor stuff, and I'm going to a sweat gland in my hand. I said, well, yeah, I need to at some point go here, right? That's my hands, arms, legs, here. But I still have to have 2 neurons in that pathway with a ganglia somehow, right? So I have to have 2 in ganglia. So I have no ganglia out here, right? They're not there. But I do have one right there. So I said I'll do this. I'll come through this way through my white rami, hook on to my neuron, backtrack this way, back through my gray rami because I'm unmyelinated, and then come out this way and go to my hand. So it just goes around, makes a U-turn, and comes back. So I still have my preganglionic. It's still myelinated. All the way through. Here's my ganglia, right synapse. Second neuron, here's my postganglionic. It's unmyelinated. It travels through my gray rami. The other one goes through the white. Flips out through my ventral ramus and goes to the hand. Yay, nay, sort of, kinda? Any better? Not really? So what else can I do to help you guys out with that? Is this like way too confusing, or I would just really like you to know, I go through my dorsal ramus, where am I heading to? I go through my ventral ramus, where am I going to? I go this way through my rami communicantes, where am I going to? What travels through my white rami? Well, those are all my preganglionic visceral motor neurons. What goes through my gray one? Postganglionic motor neurons. My synapse here, my sympathetic chain, where am I heading to? Thoracic cavity. I go to one of my pre-vertebral ones. Where am I heading to? Well, it depends which one I'm going to, but all that abdominal pelvic stuff, right, on this one. What's traveling through my dorsal roots over here? Yeah, axons of my little sensory neurons. That's the thing. What's going through my ventral root? Well, those are axons of my motor neurons. Some things like that. So what do you guys think? Too crazy? Or can you sort of figure it out? Or I don't know. Do you want to like think about it over the weekend or something? How about that? Alright, chapter 14 stuff. So let's run through that real quick. That's all the brain stuff. And so there's not a lot of information from that chapter 16, but there is a lot from this chapter on the brain. So the brain stuff and this stuff is probably the most of it because that other chapter is so short. Not a lot of information comes from that, you know, extra receptors, interoreceptors, that sort of thing. So, all right, so make sure, I'm just going to go through like your chapter 14 notes on the brain stuff. Make sure you know the major parts of the brain. Major parts of the brain. Brainstem, cerebrum, cerebellum, and the diencephalon. So I'll ask you, something along those lines, like which one's not, that sort of thing. Okay, that's good to know. Major parts of the brain. Next thing is that you want to know blood supply to and from the brain. So going to the brain, those are the arteries, the carotid artery. Coming from the brain, the veins, jugular veins, right? Carotid arteries in, jugular veins out. That sort of thing. So blood supply is good to know. You should know about the blood-brain barrier. And it's basically a barrier between your bloodstream and your brain. So astrocytes make that, keeps unwanted substances from crossing over from one side to the other. It's a barrier, protection, that sort of thing. That's all I have to know for that one too. So blood-brain barrier, astrocytes, so like isolates the brain. Alrighty, what about those protective coverings on the brain? Well, I have 3 layers. They're called the meninges, the pia mater, the arachnoid, and the dura mater. So those 3, make sure you know which one is more superficial. That's the dura mater. And then the deepest one is the pia mater, right? Just remember the word pad, P-A-D, pia, arachnoid, dura. Okay, so that would be good, those meninges. There will be a question on cerebral spinal fluid, probably several questions on cerebral spinal fluid. You probably want to know the function of cerebral spinal fluid, what cushions the brain, right, from impact, transports stuff like nutrients and ions, waste products, that's pretty good. The brain basically floats in that stuff, right, that's cerebral spinal fluid. And you want to know like which cells produce it. That would be the ependymal cells, right? So the ependymal cells found in the choroid plexus, lines the ventricles, that whole thing. So know about the functions and how it's produced. With that being said, you have to know the flow of that as well. Meaning that we have the 2 lateral ventricles. They empty into the 3rd ventricle through my little interventricular foramen thing, right? And then from the 3rd goes to the 4th ventricle through my little cerebral aqueduct. So make sure you know about the laterals, the interventricular, the cerebral, sort of like do the flow thing. They'll probably ask you about a good 2 to 3 questions on that stuff. So the ependymal cells and the flowing, naming the little ducts and all that. So that would be good. And let's see. So what's hydrocephalus?
Water in the brain.
Water on the brain, that's it, right? So hydro, water, like hydrant, right? Okay, so we're good there. Other things you need to know. The brain stem. So what's included with the brain stem? Medulla, right? So your medulla oblongata, the pons, and the midbrain. So you may want to know that, right? So those 3 things go with the brain stem. Medulla oblongata, the pons, and the midbrain. Then you want to know like what each one of those things actually will do. So what's the medulla do? Respiration, heart rate, those sorts of things. Make sure you can go back and figure that out. Ascending and descending tracks, all those goodies. So know what each one will do. So what's the medulla do? What's the pons do? What's the midbrain do? Okay. Where might I find, this goes with that whole thing like who does what sort of thing, those decusations, that crossing over sort of thing, right? So the right side of my brain controls the left side of my body, it has to cross over. Where does that crossing over take place at? Yeah, in the medulla. Actually, that's in the medulla. We go through and take a look at all those. So in those pyramids, right, in the medulla. That would be good to know. So I'm just going to like what's these things actually are doing here. So that's good. So we said, yeah, medulla does heart rate and breathing, respiration, blood flow, all that good stuff. The pons, my second section, it's the bridge, right? That's my little bridge. Connects all my things together, ascending, descending tracks. So that's all we're really for that, it's just the bridge. And then we had on there the midbrain. That did a lot of stuff, right? We did like a boatload. We had third ventricle was there. We had, what else? Substantia nigra, the red nucleus. We did superior and inferior colliculi. We did all those reflex moves of the head, neck, and trunk. We also did maintaining consciousness, awakens you from sleep. So we did like a whole lot of stuff. So that's like a big one. Probably about 3 or 4 questions from that alone. Just like what's the midbrain do? That sort of thing. So that would be good. Several questions there. What about the cerebellum, the function of that little guy? Yeah, right. Balance is the key for that little guy. So I have the second largest portion of the brain, that's the cerebellum. Great for balance on that one. That's probably about it, right? So posture, balance, that's probably all you really want to know this one. Then we went on to the diencephalon. And what's included with that one? All those things that sound like thalamus. So thalamus, hypothalamus, subthalamus, epithalamus, things like that. That's all part of my diencephalon. And then you want to know what each one of those 3 things or 4 things do. And so we said, yeah, the thalamus, that's the big one, right? Maybe? No. Hypothalamus, right? Don't be confused. So the hypothalamus, that's what it does. Eating, drinking, licking, whatever, that crazy stuff, right? So the thalamus basically is a relay center, right? All my sensory information being relayed through the thalamus. That's the key for that little guy. What else can we do for that little one? Hypothalamus, that's the big one, right? We said it does a lot. It connects to the pituitary gland, that little infundibulum. That would be good to know. And we have on there, yeah, it controls the ANS. All those emotions and behaviors are regulated with the hypothalamus. We can do body temperature, we can do day and night cycles, we can do swallowing, thirst, hunger. So it does a lot. So great thing to pick for that one. I think I said there's about 6 questions right in a row, pretty close to right in a row, that have the answer as hypothalamus. So there's a lot of questions off of that one. Epithalamus, not too much going on there, other than it's the location of the pineal gland that we use for going to sleep because it makes melatonin for us. So that would be one question maybe on that, like where's the pineal gland located? Well, it's in the epithalamus. What's it do? It makes melatonin. Something along those lines. Alrighty. Cerebrum. You have a right side and a left side of your brain. And if you're more right-sided, we said you're more artsy, creative, spatial awareness, music-oriented. Left side, language, right? Math, science, those sorts of skills. So right side versus left side. How do we connect them together? Corpus callosum. So you may want to know the corpus callosum connects the right side of your brain to the left side. That would be good to know. And then I gave you some definitions of sulcus and gyrus. Like what were those things, what were they, right? Sort of thing. Fissure. So a fissure is a deep groove. A sulcus is a shallow groove. And a gyra is like an elevated portion, right? Like a elevated region of the brain, I should say. So that would be good to know. What about the lobes of your brain? Can you name all 4 of those? Frontal, parietal, occipital, and temporal. So that's good. I know about those. I would also know about that central sulcus thing, how it divides the front of the brain from the back of the brain. So there's a question there. And then pre and post central gyrus. So pre-central gyrus does what for us? Somatic motor commands. Post-central gyrus does somatosensory. So all information from joint position and muscles and all that crazy stuff. So they're both sort of linked with like skeletal muscle stuff. That's good. And We already spoke about white matter and gray matter, how one's myelinated, the other one's unmyelinated, that crazy stuff. What about that word tract? A tract. What was a tract? Well, a tract was a group of axons, we said from before. Nuclei were the cell bodies, and the tracts were made up of the axons. And so I had 3 different types of tracts that I could find in the brain. And one tract actually ran from the gyra, right, on the same hemisphere. Those were my association tracts. One would cross over from one side to the other, commissural tracts, and then other ones would project a long distance from like the cerebrum down to your spinal cord. Those were called the projection tracts. So make sure you know about those 3 types of tracts. There's probably, I think I'll probably do like 2 questions on those types of tracts, like where they're located, sort of thing, like same side, crossover, projection, something like that. So probably a couple questions there. What about the basal ganglia? That's the one that works with your limbic system, the whole Phineas gauge, limbic system, emotions and behavior, things along those lines. So it might be good to know about that, how the basal ganglia work with the limbic system to produce you, right, your personality, all those great things, emotional behaviors. That's all good. Again, Phineas gauge, I would know his name. That's about it for that one. What's Broca's speech area good for? Yeah, right, all things with speech. So tongue movement, lips, cheeks, respiration, anything you need to vocalize something. So you'll be able to move your tongue, move your lips, move your cheeks, all those good things. That's good. We already talked about right and left hemispheres as far as the right side controls the left side of the body, left side controls the right side of the body. More right brain, you do this, or more left brain, you do that. So a couple questions there, I'm pretty sure. And then last, we have all those brain waves, alpha waves, beta waves, theta and delta. And we said, yeah, if I have some beta waves, I'm probably doing what?
Busy.
Busy, right. So B for busy, B for beta. If I'm awake, I have alpha waves. If I have some sort of brain damage, I probably have some delta waves, right? So learn those. I'll give you probably 2 questions on that too. So maybe a couple easy ones for you on that one. And then don't forget about those cranial nerves. We took the take-home quiz on those. Would you like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 questions on cranial nerves? That would be easy for you or hard for you? You want less than 5? Less than 5, okay. I would probably ask you, like, which ones are motor, which ones are sensory, right, that sort of thing. So if you just remember that little, some say marry money, but my brother says bad business, marry money, that would be good to know because I'll probably ask you, which cranial nerve is sensory, which one is motor, that sort of thing. Could you figure out like which ones would be used for like eye movement? Maybe? It's like 3, 4, and 6 for those. Which one for like facial expression? Facial nerve. Which one for like taste? 7 and 9 for things. So and you can think about that, right? So we'll do some cranial nerve stuff. Not sure like how many, but we'll do a couple, at least a couple. Okay. So that's chapter 14. 15 we said, or 16 rather, right? It doesn't have that much in there. It only has, let me pull it up here real quick. Interoreceptors, exteroreceptors, all that craziness. So there's not a lot of questions that come off of that. If I do like maybe 10 questions, probably, right? That might be pretty good. And then the rest will come from that autonomic stuff, which I did like a little review today on this one. All of this stuff, so make sure you know this, make sure you know that, make sure you know this. That's something I just went over like right before you just did a review. I would know all that stuff. Then get lots of questions just from that little bit of stuff. So, and then Monday, actually, we'll have your test in my hand, and I'll go through each one to make sure you got it all down. How about that? And then test on Tuesday. So, study a little bit over the weekend. Yeah.
What time's the practical?
Practicals for Monday, right? So the Monday group goes early, 11 to 12. Tuesday, Thursday group goes from 12 to 1. Yes.
Wednesday, what time is our class?
Wednesday. Well, Wednesday we'll have lecture at 2 for the final exam. So just come take the final, then you're done. So
Can we make it like earlier?
probably could. If you're ready to make the final exam earlier, you want to do it earlier, like 11 or something, or do you want to come to study, or Let's figure it out on the Monday, how about that? Okay, I have no problem doing it earlier, if you want to do it early, get it out of the way, that's fine for me too, so, we'll really have lab anyway. Tuesday, no lab, right, it's a lecture, so.